What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. Welcome to my channel. Week 6 has come and gone, and if Week 6 has told us anything about the college football season, it's that we better buckle up because October is going to be absolutely wild. November is going to be probably even more wild than October is. Guys, we just better buckle up because this college football season could be unlike any college football season that we have seen throughout college football history. And maybe some of you guys have already learned that, but it especially got set in here with what we saw in Week 6. I'm going to give you my personal top 5 takeaways here, but before we dive into that, just want to say thank you guys for all the support the channel has seen as of late. If you guys want to continue to show your support for the channel, please hit the subscribe button, ring the bell. That's the biggest way for you guys to help support this channel, but there are more ways that you can do so if you'd like to. You guys are doing one of them right now just by watching the video, and you guys can do more by liking, commenting, sharing, and anything else that you guys may be willing and or able to do to help me support this channel. But again, these are my personal biggest takeaways from Week 6. If you guys have more takeaways or you'd like to expand on a takeaway that I also had, please leave it in the comment section down below. I'm always interested to hear what you guys as well have learned so far this college football season. But you guys know me. I like to do a couple of general takeaways here. And my first sort of general takeaway is that every conference, every single conference, and we're looking at the Power 5 here. We're going to talk about the Group of 5 later, but we're looking at the Power 5. Every conference, bona fide, has multiple college football playoff contenders, and that is, in my opinion, a fact. Let's take a look at the very, very obvious one, especially when you take a look at the rankings. That's the Big Ten Conference. You have Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State. In a lot of people's minds are 3 top 5 teams, but or I should say in some people's minds are 3 top 5 teams, but in a lot of people, in fact, I'm pretty sure I'm going to speak for most people here when I say that those 3 teams are at the very minimum inside their top 10. Those are 3 teams that not only rely on the same conference, but lie in the same division. When you take a look at the Pac-12, you have the likes of Washington and Oregon. USC still there as well. You can even go down the list a little bit more. Oregon State, Utah, UCLA, Washington. All those teams technically are still in playoff contention. All those teams have 1 loss or fewer. When you take a look at some of the other conference here, the SEC is not just Georgia. Yes, maybe it's Georgia and then a little bit of a gap, but Alabama is really starting to come along. They are playing really, really well. Ole Miss technically still in that conversation there as well. Tennessee is still sitting there with 1 loss. Now, some of those teams have some work to do, but still in playoff contention. And then when you go down the list a little bit more, the ACC is a lot more than just Florida State, North Carolina, and Louisville. Again, we'll talk about it here in a little bit, but they're starting to emerge as playoff contenders. And then the Big 12. It used to be Texas and then the field. Now it's Oklahoma, Texas, and the field there again. So there's at the very minimum 2 teams in every single Power 5 conference that can contend for a spot in the college football playoff, and I think that's exactly what the appeal of the 12-team format is going to be. Look, there are so many teams this year that are absolutely worthy of getting into the college football playoff. It is ridiculous. There are so many really, really good teams, and I mean, you can take a look at, I think, pretty much anyone inside the AP top, what is that, 20? Inside the AP top 20 there as teams that really can make a run, and teams that, while some have more to work on than others and some are more talented than others, there are so many teams this year that can compete for a national championship, and there's at least 2 in every single conference. But when you go ahead and take a look at the Group of 5 conversation, guys, this race could definitely be as exciting as the national conversation, and I believe it is as wide open again. I listed so many teams there in the Power 5 conferences that can make the college football playoff, and even probably some more that I didn't mention there, as Duke, again, another part there of the ACC. But when you take a look here at the Group of 5, there are so many teams that can vie for a spot as the Group of 5 representative in the New Year's Six Bowl game. The G5 champion last year in Tulane, they're definitely still in that conversation. A big game with Memphis, who also is in that conversation. Those are a couple teams that are out of the American Athletic to watch. If you want to go a little bit off the radar here and look at some teams that I don't have up here on the screen, there's a big game in Conference USA this week when Liberty goes to play Jacksonville State. Those are 2 teams that have 1 or fewer losses. Liberty, one of the 14 unbeaten teams left in the country. They're still going to vie for a spot in the group of 5 realm. You have a couple teams in the Mid-American Conference, Ohio and Toledo, maybe even Miami, Ohio, that like to compete for that spot. The Mountain West, probably home to a lot of the top contenders here. Of course, Wyoming pulled off the big win against Fresno State, and although Fresno State definitely still alive for that spot in the group of 5. Air Force is sitting there undefeated right now. And then you go ahead and take a look at the Sun Belt Conference. James Madison, Georgia Southern, Marshall. You can make a case for a couple teams in the Sun Belt West, although all of them do have, at the very minimum, 2 losses. What I'm trying to say, and I just listed off so many teams there, I do not, there are no group of 5 teams ranked right now in the top 25 poll. And I don't think that's because there are teams that, and I don't think that's because the teams aren't good enough. I think these group of 5 teams are good enough to compete with some of the Power 5 teams that we see ranked, but there is no clear-cut favorite, which makes it really hard to rank a G5 team, especially when you consider resumes and everything like that. It just makes it difficult. I don't really know how else to explain it, but with so many G5 contenders this year, guys, it's just going to be really, really fascinating to see all of these big G5 games, a lot of them coming up this week, to see who really gets, what the field really narrows down to, and who the true contenders are going to emerge to be in the group of 5, for that group of 5 spot in a New Year's Six bowl game. Guys, there are so many teams that can get there, but only one can. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens there with that conversation. But I think a lot is going to get figured out this week. Tulane and Memphis, James Madison and Georgia Southern play, Wyoming and Air Force play, and then again, like I said, Liberty and Jacksonville State. So there are a lot of games this week that are going to decide a lot of things in the G5 conversation. But let's move back on into the Power 5 here, start talking about some games. Watch out, Florida State. North Carolina and Louisville are legit. I've already taken away that Duke is a legitimate ACC contender. Now, maybe not as much right now just because of the quarterback situation involving Riley Leonard. Who knows when or if he's going to be able to come back this college football season. But North Carolina and Louisville just proved that they are forces to be reckoned with here in the ACC. It is not just Florida State. I mean, let's go ahead and speak on what North Carolina did, right? I know there was a lot of concern about the play of Drake May and how he wasn't necessarily putting up the numbers that he did last year. Well, let's go ahead and put that to bed right now. He had 442 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 85.4 QBR here in this game. Ended up rushing for a touchdown as well. The team as a whole had had 4.2 yards per carry. Nate McCullum, Kobe Paysor is there, and now Devontae Walker is eligible. That's just another weapon for Drake May and company. And then you want to talk about what Louisville did to the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. This is the Notre Dame Fighting Irish that, generally speaking, is really, really good line of scrimmage play. Offensively, defensively, these are probably some of the best units on the line of scrimmage with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish in the entire country. And Louisville was able to run all over them. The pass rush that was so big for them last year was really, really able to step up for the Louisville Cardinals. So I'll get you exact numbers here. They were able to generate 5 sacks on probably one of, if not the best offensive lines in the entire country. Sam Hartman, this Louisville defense took over. They forced 5 turnovers, including 3 interceptions from Sam Hartman. And I believe both of those fumbles were lost by him as well. Correct me if I am wrong. But then when you talk about the Notre Dame defensive line that's usually able to generate pressure in the backfield and everything else like that, Jawar Jordan went off. 21 carries, 143 yards, 2 touchdowns, and many a times throughout this game lit the roof on fire for the Louisville Cardinals. This is a Louisville team, guys, that is bona fide top 15. They're a really, really good team, and not only Florida State, but North Carolina, Duke. You got to watch out for this Louisville Cardinal team. Now, I am unsure of who plays who. I know Florida State plays Duke, but they do not play North Carolina or Louisville here in the regular season. So, going to be very interesting to see how the ACC conversation shakes out. But again, like I talked about there with my takeaway number 5, or I guess my 5th biggest takeaway here as we count up, this is a conference in the ACC that's made up of a lot more than just Florida State. So keep that in mind. We're going to go over now and talk about the SEC as Georgia is dominant once again. I talked about it in my preview when I was talking about Georgia and Kentucky, right? Georgia, when you go take a look back at last year, really struggled with a team in Kent State that they should have easily handled. They struggled in facets against they struggled in ways against other opponents last year as well, especially that game against Missouri. And everyone was kind of wondering last year, like, Georgia is not as dominant as they were in 2021. But after that Missouri game last year, Georgia was really able to turn it on. They were able to play really, really well. Similar sort of story this year, right? They struggled in the early season. The offensive line got bullied by an FCS team, and then it really took them a long time to be able to put their foot in the ground and get it done against teams like UAB, South Carolina, and then most recently Auburn. And then coming in here into a top 25 showdown, they're really looking to put their foot in the ground and maybe get by with a little scare. But that's not what happened. Georgia was dominant. I mean, you want to talk about dominance. That game was the definition of dominance. Georgia, defensively, really showed up. 183 total yards allowed. That was it. They really were able to get pressure on Devin Leary, were able to make this Kentucky offense feel uncomfortable. They only allowed Kentucky 2.3 yards per carry, and this is a Georgia team that offensively lit up. 608 yards, just absolutely phenomenal. That's the definition of dominance right there. Georgia is back, and spoiler alert, may very well be the number one team again in the nation, at least in terms of me. But when you take a look at the other division, to the SEC West, guys, Alabama is back on top of the SEC West, and that is bona fide, right? You have the tiebreaker head-to-head win over the Ole Miss Rebels, and now you have the tiebreaker head-to-head win over the Texas A&M Aggies. Now, still a lot of interesting games on Bama's schedule coming up, as you still have to play Auburn, of course, at the end of the season. But you also still have to play Tennessee, right? You still have to play LSU. So still some interesting games, but Bama started to look like Bama again. And I'm sure you guys know what I mean by that. In this game against Texas A&M, Jalen Milroe is really starting to round into form as a pretty solid quarterback for this team. And defensively, the Alabama Crimson Tide, while it wasn't always pretty in this game against Texas A&M, stepped up when it mattered most. And I mean, how about Jermaine Burton? 9 catches, 197 yards, 2 touchdowns. He absolutely went off, and the Alabama Crimson Tide once again are back at their rightful place atop of the SEC West. But my number one takeaway comes out of the Big 12 Conference. Oklahoma and Texas top the Big 12, and right now it is Oklahoma's show. Oklahoma is the top team in the Big 12 Conference right now. Welcome to Red River Rivalry, baby. That game had everything. It had drama. It definitely wasn't the cleanest game at times. There were a lot of mistakes, a lot of missed opportunities, but when it came down to it, Texas hit the field goal with, I believe, a minute 15, a minute 12, something like that left. And then Oklahoma able to drive down the field on the backs of Dylan Gabriel and Nick Anderson, able to get into the end zone. 14 or 15 seconds left, and the Oklahoma Sooners walk away victors of the Red River Rivalry. I mean, just a phenomenal game. It always is, but it really proved, and I know Oklahoma won the game, and I think proved themselves to be the top team in the Big 12, at least as of right now this season. Texas is still not going anywhere, guys. Quinn Ewers played phenomenally at the quarterback position, and this is a Texas team that, again, has a win over the Alabama Crimson Tide, which is definitely starting to look more and more impressive as the season goes along. But can anyone spoil the party in the Big 12 Conference? And by anyone, I'm really only talking about one specific team. That's the Kansas Jayhawks. Kansas State, probably not going to end up spoiling the party. Texas Tech, maybe not as good as some people, including myself, thought they were going to be this year. TCU, nope, they just ended up losing to Iowa State and West Virginia. I don't think they have the talent to match up with Oklahoma and Texas. Some of these new schools in here, maybe BYU, maybe Houston, I don't think so either. Again, due to the talent disparity, I'd be very surprised if Oklahoma and Texas did not meet again in the Big 12 championship game. So can Kansas or maybe anyone else spoil that party? Kansas has already lost to Texas. I believe they play Oklahoma later on in November, so that's going to be a very interesting matchup to watch when it comes about. But Oklahoma and Texas run the Big 12, and the winner of that game here, they probably should win the rest of their games this season. Both of them, they will meet again in the Big 12 championship game, probably for a chance to go to the college football playoff. That's going to be something to watch. But guys, that really does it for my takeaways here for Week 6. If there's anything else that you guys learned that you want to add on, please leave it in the comment section below. But hey, as always, remember to play hard but tailgate harder. My top 25 will be coming out later on today. Goodbye.